Are you ready to pay more GST? That's exactly the suggestion coming out of a report this week. I need you to share this video right now, Canada. Welcome to The Last Word. You're going to need to sit down for this one because what I'm about to tell you isn't just tone deaf. It's completely dangerous and a hugely dangerous suggestion from a council that has nothing to do with you that wants you to pay. The Business Council of Canada, one of the country's most powerful corporate lobby groups, was asked about the upcoming budget. And they just released their so-called budget consultation report. And in it, they calmly and relaxed float the idea that the government should raise the GST to pay for all the spending and the debt that Ottawa has been racking up for the last decade. Yep, you heard that right. In a country where you and me are facing grocery prices that have doubled, where rents are completely unaffordable, and where middle-class families are already one paycheck away from total financial collapse, the solution that these elites in their yachts, probably sitting in Miami, sipping on whiskey, came up with is to raise the tax on every single thing that you will buy. They even call it, and this is rich, no pun intended, the least distortionary option to solve today's deficit problems. That's economist speak for it'll hurt everyone equally, so don't worry about it, it's fair. But you and I both know that's a bullshit lie because in the real world, a GST hike would not hit everyone equally, would it? It would crush the people already hanging on by their fingernails. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the last word for the day. I hope you've had a fantastic Wednesday. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, I need to hear what you think about all of this down below in the comments. This report, called What We Heard, comes from a roundtable of chief executive officers, lobbyists, and of course, former bureaucrats who apparently think that they know what's best for all of the rest of us. They describe Canada's finances currently as fragile. They talk about fiscal slippage, and they wring their hands over structural deficits. Well, they're actually not wrong about any of that. That's a huge problem that Canada has. But where they go really south here is what they never do. And that is they never take any responsibility for the system that created these problems in the first place they were a part of. These are the same people who cheered every single government bailout, every corporate tax cut, every COVID government subsidy for big business, every handout to the industries that didn't need saving, all of it. And now they have the audacity to say that you, the regular, everyday Canadian citizen just trying to pay their bills, should pay for all of this too, at the cash register. They call it the GST hike, and they call the GST hike the least distortionary way to raise money because it supposedly doesn't mess with investment incentives or capital flows. Oh, when you hear those words, you know who's listening, right? Mark Carney. Translation, it's the easiest way for government to keep feeding its spending addiction without upsetting the investor class. And if you haven't seen the corporate Carney video I put out earlier this week, this speaks right to that man. This is exactly what he'll be listening to and exactly what he will try to execute. This is why this is so dangerous. So let's unpack first how dishonest this argument actually is. When they say raising the GST is efficient, what they're really saying is it's efficient at extracting money from you, the ordinary people. A billionaire and a barista, they both pay GST on a carton of milk, okay? But that milk represents a microscopic fraction on the billionaire's wealth and a huge chunk of the barista's budget on a daily basis. So where's the fairness in that? See, this is a consumption tax, and consumption taxes are regressive by design. The poorer you are, the more of your income gets taxed because nearly all your money tends to go toward living expenses. Things like groceries, things like transportation, things like your utilities, diapers, and sometimes school supplies, although some of those aren't taxed. A GST hike doesn't just take a bit of extra revenue here. It slices away the last few dollars people use to make ends meet in today's Canada. This is one of the worst suggestions they could possibly have come up with. And make no mistake, even a 1% increase would be absolutely devastating to the average Canadian. Every family already drowning in higher mortgage payments, rent hikes, heating costs, and record food inflation would feel all of this increase, supposedly, instantly. You'd see it on every receipt, every single bill, every restaurant tab, every back-to-school list, you'd see it. Meanwhile, the government would smile for the cameras. They'd smile, they'd sit in front of maybe hopefully not like Doug Ford's poorly lit press conference this week, but they'd sit there and they'd say, we're being fiscally responsible. No, you're being financially predatory to every single Canadian citizen. And here's where it gets really rich, again, no pun intended. The same report that tells the government to raise the GST also says Canada doesn't really have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem, which, again, the spending problem, you're exactly right. But if that's true, why is their solution to grab more money from the public instead of forcing Ottawa to stop spending like a drunken frickin' sailor? Why is that not in this report? You could put it nicer, but it should be in the report. They can't have it both ways, everybody. They can't. We can't allow this. If spending is the problem, then control the damn spending. But no, that's not how the elite world works. In their world, every program is sacred, especially if it keeps lobbyists and consultants busy. Then they're really happy. And there's nobody that likes lobbyists and consultants more than a liberal government. They say they want fiscal anchors and guardrails to all of this. And that sounds great, right? I mean, kudos to them. But those words mean nothing when the same people are cheering for billions in new strategic investments in everything from, you guessed it, green tech, defense, digital transformation, artificial intelligence. They want Ottawa to spend more and then make you pay more to cover it. That's not fiscal discipline. That's theft by using policies. That's what that is. They take the policies and steal from you through things like GST increases. Oh, take a breath with me. Take a breath. Let's get real for a minute. Let's get real for a minute about what a GST increase would actually mean for you, the average Canadian family. I want you to picture this. Take a second. Let's talk about a mom in Thunder Bay who works 2 jobs, barely covering her groceries. She suddenly sees her grocery bill jump another $5 or $10 a week. Now, to an elite like this on the Business Council, that might not sound like much, but over a month, that's a tank of gas. Over a year, that might be the holiday budget. And think about a retiree in Moncton, somebody living on CPP and OAS, very fixed income, already choosing between their medication and their heat. And then their heat gets taxed more heavily among many of the other things they buy. How are they going to survive that? And it's not even just individuals, it's small businesses too. Not people that are in this group, but small business. And Red Deer, for example, who already fights to keep customers as costs skyrocket in this country. They lose a few more every week because shoppers have to now pull back because they increased the GST. They can't afford to buy from the mom and pop shop anymore. Multiply that across 40 million Canadians, and you're not talking about belt tightening. You're talking about a slow motion collapse of all of Canada's disposable income, which there isn't much of anymore to begin with. And once people stop spending, well, what happens? Well, businesses slow down, including theirs, by the way. Layoffs begin, and suddenly Ottawa's tax revenue falls again, despite the GST hike. So to fix that, though, this group, the geniuses, right? They'll propose more stimulus spending and then claim they need another tax increase 5 years down the road to pay for all of that. From you again, by the way. That's the spiral that Canada is in right now. It's been in it for a decade. It's not going to change unless we remove this government. A government that spends too much, which is a typical liberal government, a council of elites that encourages it, and families who keep getting the bill. That's what we have. That's it. That's what we have right now. So if you're a liberal supporter, I ask you this. Put in the comments, why do you support it still? See, because this report tries to make this sound like a neutral technical solution, as if it's just smart economics. Not politics, not politics. It's just what we should do. They even use phrases like tax base broadening, least distortionary revenue source, and revenue neutrality. Thanks for all those words, folks. We really appreciate that. Now let me go and try to buy this chicken. Look, let me translate what all of those phrases mean in case you don't get it. We think you're too dumb to notice we're squeezing you. That's the translation. They'll say, well, the GST is fair because everyone pays it, including myself. Sure, if by fair you mean universally painful to everybody, then yes. But fairness isn't about equality of pain. It's about equality of opportunity. And there's no opportunity left when Canadians are maxing out credit cards to buy groceries, the very things they used to buy using their paychecks. They should buy using their paychecks. Instead, they're now paying 21 to 29% interest just to buy those things. When you treat taxation like a spreadsheet instead of a human issue, which is what Mark Carney and this government and all these elites do, they try to run it as a business, but that's not government. You lose the plot. You stop seeing citizens and start seeing variables in a spreadsheet. And that's exactly what this report does too. It talks about the people of Canada like you and I are an accounting problem for this country. That's what this report says. Go read it. Nowhere in the report do they seriously discuss the things that could actually fix our fiscal mess without crushing every Canadian household in the process. There's nothing about slashing bureaucratic bloat in here. There's nothing about eliminating redundant departments, which, again, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have talked about ad infinitum. And the reason they talk about it is because it would make sense to do those things. Nothing about cutting the army of consultants that this liberal government is literally addicted to right now and spends billions on every year. They don't touch the sacred cows, of course, either. Their sacred cows, I should say, like corporate subsidies, inflated public sector pensions, or the endless parade of boutique programs designed to buy votes. Because that would require confronting the system that pays their salaries in the first place. So instead, who do they turn to? Well, they turn to you. They look down from their boardroom tables and say, well, the average Canadian can afford another 1 or maybe even 2% at the checkout, can't they? I mean, it wouldn't hurt me. They don't see the overdraft fees you just paid, the skipped dental appointment because you know you can't prepay for the work to be done while you wait for the benefits to be paid, if you have benefits at all, the second jobs, the sleepless nights wondering if the car will start in the morning because you've needed a battery for the last 6 months and every day is a crapshoot on whether you're going to get back to work or school. They don't live in that reality. You do, but they don't. So let's talk about that reality, and especially to our liberal viewers. Surely some of you go through I know a lot of you go through all this. I've talked to people that do. Numbers alone don't capture what all of this means. When you raise consumption taxes in an already dramatically stressed economy, you don't just reduce spending, you break people's spirit. Families start cutting corners everywhere. You stop going out for things like dinner with the family, even on birthdays. You skip birthday gifts. You cancel the family vacation if you even booked it in the first place. I mean, this is what this does. That's what economists call aggregate demand destruction. And for layman's terms on that, it's just life getting smaller. It's joy disappearing from the day to day when you live in Canada. That's what that is. And when people's worlds shrink, societies get angrier, Crime increases. Society's getting meaner, more divided. You can see it already in Canada. Frustration on our roads, higher crime rates, violence increasing, tension in the grocery store lines, resentment toward your neighbor and anyone who seems to be doing just a bit better. A GST hike would pour gasoline on that fire. That's what it would do. It's not just bad economics. It's absolute social suicide for a country that cannot take another tax increase whatsoever. The fact that they merely suggested that should be criminal. Canada has tried all of this before, too. Back in the 1990s, the Chrétien-Martin governments flirted with consumption taxes and consumption-based revenue to get the deficit under control. And it worked for a little while. But we need to learn our lesson from that, because the difference was they also made massive spending cuts, which the Carney government and Trudeau before him refused to actually do. They didn't just raise taxes, they also reined in Ottawa. That's back when the Liberal Party used to actually be the Liberal Party and not more like the NDP. Today's elites want the opposite: higher taxes and higher spending. That's how you destroy a middle class. It's the same trap countries like Greece, Italy, and Argentina all fell into. Governments that never met a spending program they didn't love. And bureaucracies that think taxing consumption is the same as taxing their luxury. But it's not. We're walking down that same path as those countries. One policy paper at a frickin' time. And there's a moral argument to all of this as well. There's a much deeper issue here, Canada, and it's totally moral, not just fiscal. The Business Council's report treats human suffering, even if it's financial, as just a rounding error. They talk about fiscal sustainability as if the country is some kind of abstract Excel spreadsheet, a CSV sheet, not 40 million people who are already stretched to their absolute, utter financial limits. Raising the GST to fix government mismanagement is basically like charging fire victims for the cost of the fire department's fuel to get to your house and for the cost of the water they ended up having to use to put it out. You don't punish the people for the system's failure. You fix the system. The moral failure of this idea is that it rewards irresponsibility at the top, while at the same time punishing responsibility with families at the bottom. Families who've done everything right, like worked hard, saved when they have a chance to actually do so, followed the rules that all of these government entities have set. They get told they need to now do their part again, because all those subsidies have been spent and we need more. Meanwhile, the same politicians and CEOs who created the problem in the first place keep collecting bonuses and photo opportunities. That's cowardice. It's absolute cowardice dressed up as fiscal wisdom. So, what's the call to action for you? What's the call to action for me? What do we do to change all of this? I know that's what you're asking. And make some suggestions of your own in the comments. I'd love to hear them. But the big thing is we got to wake up. And we got to start waking the liberals up. Liberal supporters in particular. We need to stop letting elites frame the debate as responsible, versus reckless. Because there's nothing responsible about draining family budgets to pay for political vanity projects. We demand that any conversation about new taxes starts with an audit of where every existing dollar went. Where does it go? You're going to ask for new tax dollars when we don't even know where the existing tax dollars go? How irresponsible is that? We demand spending discipline before new revenue could ever come in. And we remind our politicians, loudly by the way, that taxation without reform is theft with extra paperwork. Canadians have been patient. We've absorbed so much. You and I know this. We've taken it in. We've been stabbed by this government a million times. We've absorbed inflation, interest rate fluctuations, job insecurity, and housing chaos coast to coast. But patience has limits. You raise the GST now, and you will break that patience. And when that happens, the polite silence of the middle class will turn into something much, much louder. And it has every right to do so. The Business Council of Canada can dress all of this up however it wants in a big fancy PDF document like they did. What we heard, that's what they call it. They can dress it up in economic jargon. But at the end of the day, this report is exactly what it looks like. A proposal to make you, ordinary Canadians, pay for their elite mistakes. They can call it least distortionary all they want. I call it the final distortion. The one that breaks what's left of our financial stability as a country, our trust, and our unity. If Ottawa even entertains this idea, every Canadian should stand up and say enough is enough. Because if you let them normalize taxing your survival at its fittest, they will never stop doing it. This isn't about balancing budgets anymore. It's about saving what's left of the Canadian household. So, Business Council. Message received. You might think that you heard from somewhere, and I don't know who you were talking to, but you claim it was Canadians in your report. But after this episode, you're going to hear from them for real. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things, The Last Word. Go Jays go tonight. Anyone else a little nervous about the bullpen day? Fingers crossed. We're right with you, Blue Jays. We will be back tomorrow morning with the first sip, where we will finally take a look at the Donald Trump, Mark Carney meetings from yesterday. I did want to wait on that because I wanted to see all of the things that either did or didn't come out of that. Obviously, the press conference was a hilarious abomination, and we'll talk about that. But coming away with no deal, oh man, that's bad. And I wanted to see question period today. So we're going to talk all about that tomorrow morning on the first sip. Join us at 6 a.m. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. Enjoy the Jays game. Go Jays go. And we'll see you tomorrow.